Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Texans Jacob video. Today, we're just going to discuss day 4 of Texans training camp, which was yesterday. I was there. I know I did kind of a after space and stuff on X. Make sure you follow me on there, I guess, and on Instagram as well. I'll post training camp stuff. I'm going to be going back tomorrow for the practice, so I'll be out there, be giving y'all updates and stuff. Like I said, on X especially. But there was a lot of interesting things yesterday. It's kind of hard to take away a huge amount from one practice without pads. So tomorrow and these days when they put the pads on, it'll definitely be an easier way to tell what we're looking at here, like things like the run game, which the run game, they really had no success running the ball, but I do think it's very hard to run the ball without pads. It's hard to get leverage as an offensive line, so that's something that I think could definitely improve. Definitely improve as we put the pads on, but I think everyone kind of here agrees that we want to hear about the offensive line. So let's go ahead and start with that. Let's start with what the offensive line looked like. So group one of the offensive line, they had two groups that they used for the Texans team one, or they did four different groups of teams, but the first team, they had two different offensive line groups. So the first one, which was the first two teams, which is where they had the most success offensively, they actually did pretty well offensively in the first two teams. They had Cam Robinson at left tackle, Jalen Thomas at left guard, center was Jake Andrews, right guard was Titus Howard, and right tackle was Blake Fisher. So this line had a pretty decent amount of success. They blocked pretty well up front. They really didn't have any trouble up front, except for I think the last play of Team 2, which was a sack, but it was more of a coverage sack. It was kind of one of those where, I thought CJ did have kind of enough time. There just really wasn't anyone open, and it's different in camp. You're not really going to okay, we're going to throw the ball away here. It's kind of different. So, I thought that line had a pretty good amount of success. Jalen Thomas is a guy to definitely keep an eye on as we progress into camp. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the starting left guard, but he's definitely an interesting player. He's played all five positions in his career. And he's only 25, so he really hasn't played a ton in the NFL, but in college he was a very good pass protector. He's definitely more of a pass protector than a run blocker, but definitely a guy to keep an eye on there. I would still think Laken Tomlinson ends up being the left guard for the Texans, but Jalen Thomas is a guy to watch. And then the only changes that happened to the offensive line as you got later on were Juice Scruggs came in at left guard. He ended up getting in there at left guard. Jarrett Patterson got in a little bit with the at center, I believe. I think that was maybe just team 4, though. And then Ursary took over at left tackle at one point. So those were the only changes. The right side stayed the same the entire time. It was Titus and Blake Fisher. Probably the two best linemen for the Texans so far have been Titus Howard and Cam Robinson. They both looked pretty solid. I thought Cam Robinson had a good day. He definitely fared the best out of all the tackles. Ariante Ursary had an okay day. He got beat a couple times. He had some pretty good reps. And if y'all have seen the clip, it's been out there. But me and Nico, who was also there, we both posted the clip of him working with Will Anderson after practice, which was pretty cool. Seeing him, he got to set from both sides. He's played both. So Will Anderson kind of would switch and then let him set from the other side to show him, okay, if I long arm you this way, what are you going to do? So that was a pretty cool thing to see for sure. And, the other tackle, which we'll get into here, Blake Fisher. Not good so far for Blake Fisher, not having a good camp. He got beat multiple times by Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. I thought today he started okay. He had a couple good reps against Daniil Hunter early, but he really struggled as practice went on and he was really getting beat pretty consistently. There was a couple times where I saw Titus Howard go over and give him some help, and that helped a little bit, but it wasn't great for Blake Fisher. It hasn't been great for Blake Fisher. That's definitely, that right tackle spot is definitely up for grabs between him, Ursary. Cam Robinson probably ends up at left tackle. So it's just him and Ursary for that spot. And, if I had to pick one right now, I would say Ursary's in the lead for that spot, in my opinion. Speaking of some position battles, as we'll move on from the offensive line, Cade Stover. Cade Stover had a very good day, and he played a lot with the first team, Dalton Schultz, I think he had 2 targets. One was from CJ Stroud, the other one was from Davis Mills, so he worked with the first and second team. But they rotated tight ends a lot. There was a lot of Luke Lachey was in there as well, Brevin Jordan, Irv Smith. So they let these guys kind of be out there a decent amount altogether. They were all kind of in that area. They all got chances. I think all of them got targets because Lachey also got a target. The only tight end that kind of lined up, or Irv Smith didn't get a target. He was the only guy that, for the tight ends, that didn't get a target. Brevin had a nice 20, 25-yard gain on a crosshair or a flood type route. Dalton Schultz, like I said, he had 2 targets. Cade Stover had one in the short game, and he had one that really should have been like a very, very big gain when he was working with Graham Mertz. But unfortunately, it was a little bit overthrown. It was a tough throw, but he beat Damon Arnett there. So definitely a good route from him. It was kind of a wheel route. He got open right in front of us. Definitely an impressive route, beating a corner like that, showing off some of the speed that maybe you didn't know Cade Stover had. But he had a very good day, and definitely keep an eye on the tight end battle. I think you're going to see. I kind of brought it up in my space yesterday, but I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar to what the Texans do with defensive tackles, which is, kind of playing a lot of tight ends about 40% of snaps. They'll probably use all these tight ends. Obviously, the top 3 I would assume is Cade, Dalton, and Brevin. So those 3 you'll probably see a good amount of all year as long as they stay healthy. But it is nice to have kind of some depth at that spot. Like I said, Luke Lachey got involved a little bit. Irv Smith, I like. And, Jacob Johnson was the guy that got involved at tight end a little bit, even though he's more of a fullback. He can catch the ball. So there's a lot of options there, and they have the depth to kind of, okay, if a guy goes down, they can fill in. Luke Lachey might be a guy that they keep on practice squad or something like that, or Irv Smith might be a practice squad guy. So one of those 2 guys, you could always hope that they could fill in for one of these guys if they go down, because all 3 of these guys have experienced or have been banged up. Last year 2 of them had season-ending injuries at some point. Dalton Schultz was banged up for a lot of last year apparently. So definitely some things to kind of watch for the tight end group. Cade Stover, has gotten a lot of praise from D'Amico and Caserio, so definitely keep your eye on that one. Another one of the standouts from yesterday, Azeez Al-Shaair. This has been talked about a good amount. Azeez had a really good day, especially in coverage. He was consistently, making plays over the middle. He had a pick 6 off C.J. Stroud where he just read a slant perfectly, took it to the house. I mean, C.J. just didn't see him, I don't think. And he had another one that was probably even a more impressive play, if you want to know the truth, where he was dropping back in the middle of the field. I think C.J. was targeting Xavier Hutchinson over the middle. And, it was a tough play to make. He had to get up pretty high to make it, but he batted it down, and it was kind of in the air for a little bit. Potentially could have been picked if the safety was in the right spot or something. So another very good play from him in coverage. That's kind of been the one critique of Azeez for forever is, okay, what are you going to do in coverage? He got beat pretty handily in that Kansas City game. He's always been a very good run defender. So if he can kind of improve in coverage, kind of improve his feel in coverage, but I think it's the biggest thing, just kind of knowing where to be. Which I think he did a very good job of in day 4. I'm going to keep my eye on that for sure, because, it's something that you can't just take away from one day and say, okay, this guy's massively improved. But that was definitely bad. That was probably his best coverage practice I've seen him since he's gotten here in Houston. So definitely an exciting one there. Another one of my winners of the day was rookie corner Jalen Smith. He had multiple PBUs. He made a couple nice plays. Right now, if you're looking at the corner 3 spot with Ronald Darby being retired now, Jalen Smith is pretty clearly the 3rd best corner on this team, in my opinion. Him and Tremont Smith look like the most fluid of the depth guys. Jalen Smith had a very good day. He had a PBU on Jalen Knoll. He had a PBU on Xavier Hutchinson, working with Davis Mills and Graham Mertz, I think it was, or Keaton Slovis. It was one of the 2. I don't remember exactly. But Jalen Smith had a really good day. They're going to need this 3rd corner if any of these guys miss games, which, it happens. Kamari Lassiter missed a couple games last year, and D'Angelo Ross had to fill in. And, I don't think D'Angelo Ross is a terrible player or anything like that. I think they like him in the slot. He can do a lot of things on special teams. He's just not a boundary corner. So Jalen Smith can also play in the nickel, but he could bounce out to the boundary if you need him to. So that's what you're kind of looking at with Jalen Smith, and that's what you're hoping Jalen Smith can bring to this team is, okay, if Kamari Lassiter or Derek Stingley misses games, God forbid, hopefully they don't. But if they do, you have a guy that can fill in that role. And, he's a younger player. He's on a cheap deal, so you can have him for the next four whatever years and not have to worry about that spot, which, Texans have had to worry about that spot. They haven't had a very reliable guy in a long time at that spot. 2023, it was Shaq Griffin who was in that spot, and he ended up getting cut. So they just really haven't had Kadar Holman has started games for this team in the last 2 years. So, since D'Amico's been here, they haven't really had that reliable backup corner. And so I think Jalen Smith definitely is proving he can be that type of guy, because I thought he had a really good day. He's apparently had a pretty good camp so far. So like to see that a lot. Definitely awesome to see. And one of the other thoughts that I had was the offensive. I didn't have it here. I didn't have a caption thing for it. But one of my other thoughts was the interior offensive line had a good day, I thought. Titus Howard, like I said, he's looked like probably the best lineman so far. Jake Andrews had a pretty good day. Jalen Thomas had a pretty good day. Really, the interior wasn't the ones getting beat. The tackles had a pretty rough go of it, which, is kind of to be expected when you're facing Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson. But the interior definitely looks like it's going to be better than it was last season, which is a low bar. But, it's a big part of this team if the interior can be, go from probably 30th in the league to 16th, be average. That'd be a huge win for this team. Absolutely. And I'm hoping that that's kind of what we're going to see, or what we're going to continue to see from this interior. Like I said, I'll report back tomorrow. I'll probably do another one of these videos, 9-10 minute videos, kind of get them published. I was going to do one yesterday. It just was a busy day for me, man. I was up pretty early for the practice, and then I had stuff going on after. So, I took a day off with that. But, it's going to be back-to-back practices. I'm hoping to be at all three of them. So we will see how that goes. Definitely going to keep y'all updated. Like I said, make sure y'all follow me on X. I will continue to drop, all the nuggets like while it's going on. I tweet out while it's practices. And even yesterday I had a live stream going. I live streamed some of the practice. So if you want to see that, like I said, man, go ahead and follow the X, go follow the Instagram. We kind of post on there a good amount as well. And I appreciate everyone for watching, and I will see y'all next time.